Hey,
Hey, Victor, how you doing?
bit tired.
Yeah. What
I,
what what time? What time is it there?
11:30.
Okay, it's getting late.
Yeah, but I usually go to sleep around 1 o'clock, so it's not terribly late. Just that I
Yeah.
feel that I'm tired.
Yeah. My wife and I we started going to bed at like 11 and then midnight, and now it's 1. Now it's 1:30 or 2.
Yeah,
It's just getting later. Yeah, and then we're sleeping until like 10. It's just not doesn't
yeah,
really work so well. But
yeah.
yeah.
We're trying to not let not sleep in this because we did the same with my partner, and then every time
Yeah.
it just was, okay, it's too early, so we have to go
Yeah.
to bed before, and we just try to fall asleep.
Yeah. Well, and that's funny is the kids, they start to go to bed later and later and later too. All of a sudden, they're going to bed at like 11:30. A little bit late, but
Hi,
hey there.
Hey, good morning.
good evening.
How's it going down in Sydney?
It the weekend was super hot, like 40 plus degrees.
Mm.
So
Oh,
I sat at
You
home
count
most
you
of the
count in
time.
Celsius.
Sorry?
It's 40 plus Celsius degrees.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So I was
seriously?
at home. Yeah.
Whoa, that's really hot. Is that normal or is that unseasonably warm?
It happens several times a year, I guess. And I mean, if you look inside of the continent, that's much worse. It's 14 next to the ocean, and over there in the desert, don't go there. Can be
Wow.
45, 48 or something like that.
Whoa.
It's a desert, right?
Yeah, it's like Arizona here. Like it'll be like 120, all summer. I don't know why people live there, but millions and millions of people live in Phoenix. It's crazy. Maybe we'll wait another minute, see if everyone arrives. All right. I think we'll get started. Looks like Marie. Yeah, welcome everyone to the Configure Team meeting for Monday, November 30th. Let's dive into it. So I see that Maria was asking if we have a private, if the private live stream is automatically uploaded to YouTube, but it's not in the playlist. My understanding is that we have to manually add these to the playlist. And then Victor helpfully pointed out the folder. I just wonder if, so then like right now, we are not live streaming.
Correct.
Okay.
So basically just by adding the rec to the name of the meeting, these are automatically picked up by a script and added to that folder that I linked to. So I even removed I even removed the text from the header of the page that says that live stream, and this is the YouTube playlist added to the archives. So I would say that let's just use this link in the future. I added the link as well to the header.
Perfect. Great. All right.
It's organized by date as well, so it's nice.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. So yeah, let's dive into discussion items. So the first thing was that Maria's item for the week is the Terraform state details page in version management UI. She's hoping to scope the discussion, break down the issue, open dev specific issues, and close the design issue. And hopefully get everything 100% ready for development. That sounds great. My first question is, I did see another issue that had already been created. And I'm wondering, I see a lot of activity on this, and I thought, is this a prior design issue, or could we just?
Yeah, I can give you more details, or Emily as well. So this is about the state listing, having actions in the state list. The issue that we would like us to scope here and split into multiple issues are about the details section. So a single state details, everything included, including even the versions and everything there.
Okay. Oh, I see. So, and I think that's where I maybe got a little bit lost, because it all looks like it's like the same page, right? In a sense, we're talking about the state listing page, but it's progressive, right? So we currently have the state list.
No.
It's just
so
the
state list. The state list is done. Let's assume that.
So she wants the state details. Okay.
Exactly. So that issue that Maria linked and she wants us to have discussed is about the state details, not the state list.
Oh, okay, that's right. They look so similar.
Exactly.
Similar. I was like, this is the same.
Yeah, because this is what came out from the user interviews. That the most important part of the state details is actually the version list. And that's a list inside the details page, but that's already a single state view and the versions of that single state.
All right. Well, I want to apologize. I looked at these and they look so similar.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay.
It's good that we cleaned this up because others might have this.
Great. Okay. So state details page. All right.
We have a proposal with Maria and the last comment, and as to start the discussion, I'm more than happy to.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to drive the and I'll take notes?
I would just share this, and then I would like the engineers to have the discussion here, because this is about splitting the issue into multiple parts, so it shouldn't be me. Just in case you might not be familiar with the designs. Actually, this is why I joined the meeting today. So if you scroll down, you can see 2 comments. I will read my comment because that's what I understand better. So there are 4 steps basically. One would be just a state details page with this top level state information. The top level state information is, if you look at any of these details views, there's just a state name, last changed branch, commit SHA if it exists, the size of the state file, Terraform version, and the serial plus lineage of the given Terraform state file. So this would be just at the top, nothing else. This is not very useful yet. So to shift something, I would like to add the second item as well in my list, which is the diversions table, which I would say at the core of this page. This is that probably misled Nicholas as well, because this is very similar to the versions list, to the state list view, and this is just the table without many things. So there are no individual state level, version level actions in that list, like downloading and removing or comparing with previous state. In the first step, I would add the actions as we did with the state listing, but these are already actions of a given version, except for comparison. And Then there is a fourth item, which is not that very important because we actually have these actions in the state list view, but we could add some actions to the header as well. And the last item would be the version comparison that Matt and Maria are still working on. But as I consider it to be a really much bigger chunk of development, I would leave it to the end. Basically, this is the idea. I just said it would have been smarter if I share my screen and scroll all along and describe stuff like that, but I did not do that.
No, yeah, like you definitely outline. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna copy this out of here into the definition of done here. So and I'm wondering, so are these in priority order, like of what you would consider to be highest to lowest priority right now?
That was my idea, but it happened already quite a few times that when the discussion started, it turned out that a better prioritization exists. So it's not set in stone at all.
Right. And then, so I'm just gonna go over it just one more time. So we've got state details page with top level state. That's just like the basic state information that we already have in the database. We're just displaying it on the state, the top of the page. And there's a versions tab, the versions table.
I don't know if we have the file size, the state file size in the database today. Tiger might know it, or Matt, just.
We don't. We could probably get it. I think it's probably quite a simple calculation to request that size, but we don't store it in the database.
Okay. So we would need to calculate it, store it. Okay. And then there's the versions tab with the versions table. That was the thing that I got confused on, where you're seeing a very similar set of version changes. Likely we can reuse a lot of the components that we're using for the listing page. Then there's actions. We have individual actions for the state versions. So we're saying,
I don't see actions on the design. Where are the actions, or what are the actions going to be?
That's a really good question. I was just searching those as well. I remember some designs around that, so I can try to.
My guess is that, and I spoke with Maria this morning, I think the idea is that we don't do that initially for the state details, but which is why the design has no actions.
Actually, she has designs with actions. I've seen.
Yeah, I commented on one such design earlier today. It's probably still in my email. I can find it.
Okay. Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is that again, I just spoke with her this morning. What I think she is intending is that we do this progressively, where we first do, this iteration has no actions, and then a subsequent iteration we add in the
That's
action.
totally correct, but it should be your job to decide on the right split of the issue, and it's not Maria's job. So if Emily says that we have all the backend APIs there, we know how to put it together, it's a matter of minutes to put even the actions on the versions list, then we can just have it in a to-do as a checkbox, and we don't need a separate issue for it. But actually, the job today with this discussion is to have multiple issues scoped, how you see best for delivery.
Yeah, and I just want to comment, Hoarder, this issue that you commented on is the state listing. It's the same one that I got confused on. It's a different page.
They're not the same thing?
No.
The detail is when you click through on one to see the details of the particular item in the list. It's a list item detail view.
Oh, the other one is a list of versions.
Yeah, the other one is a list of states. State files.
Actually, there are linked issues in that issue that we are discussing that are in blocks state. I mean, being blocked by this one. And those two issues are about the actions. Like add the ability to download individual state file version. That's one of them. And the other is to action to remove only a single version of a state file. These are the two actions out of the three that we want to have. The third action is to compare with the previous version. And I guess that designs are in those issues.
I sort of wonder if there isn't too much duplication across these two views. Like there's almost too much version and commit and pipeline information on the state listing. I would almost want to treat that more like we treat, like if you look at like repository files, you know, there's a file, a name, the commit message, like the little blurb of commit message from the last commit and last updated, and that's it. To do anything with the file, you have to click through to the file. So I almost wonder if we shouldn't kind of keep that so that these two views are a little less similar.
This is not the goal of this discussion. I understand your worries, as I see many of you being confused. Maria ran the interviews, and during the interviews, this did not emerge as leading to confusion. So at the same time, I have to admit that at that time, she was running the interviews with a different design on the state listing and had these designs, I think, under the version listing only. So we might simplify the state listing in a future iteration, but I would like us to focus now on the details page exclusively.
Right, and so actions. I wonder, yeah, to me, like what is more valuable about the state details page? Is it the actions? Is it the versions? Or is it the version comparison? What's the most valuable piece?
The most valuable is clearly the version comparison. That's what came out from discussion.
And that's what I would assume also. So would it make sense to start with that first?
If we can do it without having a versions list. Because with Maria, we approached it in a way that once we have versions list, then we can even allow people to download specific versions and compare it locally.
Yeah, you need some way to choose the two versions that you need to compare. So you need a list. But like the commit message and the pipeline, is that all associated with the state, or is it still, there's no connection and it's Tiger? No, or
the pipeline should be linked from, well, the build actually, the job specifically that ran the update should be linked now, and from that we can get to the pipeline and to the commit and merge request. So it's a bit of a few hoops to jump through, but the link should be there.
Okay, so it sounds like we need some way to be able to compare the two. So we need a listing in order to actually to get to the high valued component, which is the comparison, right? To me, that's the high value in this.
That's correct.
Is the actions really that valuable, or is this just redundant? It's like, I'm here, makes sense for me to be able to have some, I can download something.
Yeah, I would say that the remove a specific version is a valuable one. So if you put out some credentials that you shouldn't add to your Terraform state file, and you want to remove it, that's a really valuable one. Something that actually I would like to put in premium, as it's a security feature. So that's clearly a valuable one. For download JSON, I would agree that if it means that because of the download JSON button, we have to postpone shipping the version comparison by a milestone, then just not do the download JSON.
Okay. I guess my other question here, the version comparison, how close do we think we are to having a clear picture of what we want there? I say this, I talked with Maria this morning. She asked me what I thought about something that she came up with. It looked like it was kind of like these expander, you kind of expand these different sections. I can't remember what the UI element is called, but she was having each resource and you could expand to see the create, update, and delete. But does anyone know more than I do about that?
I think she worked on it with Matt, so either Matt or no one, I would assume.
So the last I know is what we discussed on the issue. I think we're expecting to get together at some point to keep talking about it. But I haven't seen what her latest mock-up is.
What was your idea there to do structural diffing? Like instead of textual, to do structural and say, like, from this resource, these sub-resources were removed and added?
Yeah, because I kind of pitched a few approaches. One was to do textual diffing with sorted keys. It works okay. It's still a little bit hard, especially if you're going to have a lot of changes to see exactly what's changing. You kind of have to dig to figure out what you're looking at, because there's like context lines are hard to find. So then kind of the idea of structural, initially just having 3 sections, create, update, delete, and the sum, like kind of the summary of how many resources under each are being affected, and then expand it and see the types of resources. Under the types, you could see the names, and then under the names, see all the attributes being changed, and just be able to drill down. The idea there in my head was you could have the unexpanded view could kind of be duplicated into the MR widget so that people could drill into it if they wanted to. But then if you were looking at a full diff view, it would just be automatically expanded already, so you'd see everything. But if she updated anything on that issue, I haven't seen it, but I also have not been able to get through all of my emails since before the break, so I'm still trying to get caught up.
I think I've seen it in her weekly plans that she has designs based on your discussion from last week, and I guess that's what she showed to Nicholas as well, but I haven't seen it either.
All right, so that's sounding really exciting. Generally, it's also sounding like maybe that we should segment that off into a second iteration of this page, because it sounds like it's not settled. I would vote for, in terms of definition of done, 1 through 4 as being iteration 1, and then once the version comparison is settled, then that would be iteration 2. Any contrarian thoughts on that, or any thoughts at all?
I would ask if it's realistic to ship all of this in a milestone.
You mean the actions and the version and all that?
Yeah.
Well, the only reason I say that, and Emily Tiger, speak up here, is that we're kind of already just shipped it, a lot of the functionality on the listing page. Is it possible to kind of hoist some of that over, or is this going to be a rewrite situation?
I think a lot of it's going to be a rewrite. Well, because you have to build a whole new page with a route. So all of that. And then the download and remove and lock and unlock are all associated with the state, not the version, correct? So we'd have to make new actions for all of those in GraphQL.
So you can't just do like version.state and then.
Well, I don't think like lock and unlock are on the version, right? Those are on the state details page.
That's
but
correct.
Kind of at the top level, so not in the versions table.
Yeah, actually, it's on the last version could be load or unload, we don't even have lock and unlock, I guess.
Okay, yeah, we can update. Sorry, I'm looking at the definition of done. The download we're working on now, which I think can be reused, the delete currently deletes everything. So it deletes the state in all versions, and we need a new delete that just deletes a single version. So, well, I guess if it's me by myself, no, it's not gonna happen. But if multiple people are working on it, I think it's possible.
Actually, I can even imagine that delete misses some backend work as well, because we had a very quick chat with Tiger last week about that. What I would like to have is when you delete a version, we leave it in the database and we show that there was a version that was deleted by XY. So for compliance reasons, this could be important. So we just delete the version from the object storage and mark that record is deleted. And I don't know if the backend is there.
I think there's also some nuance to that backend, because when you delete a version that's not the latest, that's going to be a different case from deleting the one that is the latest. And we'll kind of have to handle that.
You can't delete the latest. Very good point. We came to that conclusion that we were just not allowed to delete the latest version.
Really?
Wouldn't deleting the latest be kind of the same thing as rolling back to the last one, though? Or should it be?
Yeah, and I would say we might want to update the design for that as well. I'd make it a separate iter, because when I first saw it, I thought it was pending deletion, and there's really nothing there. As far as I can tell, it's communicating that it's still there, but in reality, it's not there. So it needs to be communicated that like it's not recoverable, even though we're showing you data that's there. There's no way to actually recover the files because they've been deleted.
Sorry, I don't understand what you mean that should be cleaned up. And I, at the same time, understand it's important. Could you add a bit more context? That is it a single version?
Let me share my screen. For this right here, I assumed that like it was pending deletion and that there would be a way to undelete it. And then Maria explained to me that like we're keeping the data but deleting the files. But I, like as a user, I have no idea that that's just completely unrecoverable, that it's just gone.
I feel I agree with you. Like the kind of grayed out to me means something like might still happen. For me, like there should be like a big red X icon that's just like this is gone.
Yeah.
Like gone. You know, and this is where I would also put the, you know, so and so deleted 2 months ago, you know, or 1 day ago. Like you can kind of repurpose this information and there won't be a commit associated. It'll be manually updated. So and so deleted it, and when they did, there's no, you know, there won't be a pipeline. Resources will be 0. Like there's nothing. It's gone.
You know what? I partially agree. So my original idea was that we should somewhere show clearly that when and who removed it. At the same time, I think the commit message and pipeline is important, because it's just that for reference, they might want to have it to know that, okay, is it somebody who is just trying to, so if I'm thinking about the security perspective, that's why we want to keep the line, the record itself, that there was something happening. And if we remove even the pipeline and commit details there, it's like, how will you figure out what happened? You just know that who did it, but you don't know what was behind it.
You make a really good point. There may also be a case for like allowing someone, or maybe even requiring someone to specify a reason for deletion so that we can display that too.
Yeah, I was thinking actually about that.
Can I maybe pitch? Maybe we should treat deletion specifically as a fully separate issue that we should implement separately from what's on this list. Like this seems like deletion is a big enough feature, and it's potentially one that we want to put in EE. So maybe we should treat that as a fully separate thing. What do you all think?
Yeah, that's what I would say. If we want to just have a delete that's just delete, we can kind of move forward with that. But if we want to have this, you know, very outlined process of what can be deleted and what can't be deleted, and how do we track deletions, I would say that's more, it maybe needs more investigation and a different design.
It's a whole feature by itself, I feel like.
You decide, and that's your proposal. So
yeah. Okay. So what if we yeah, you know, and I've updated the iterations here. So are we saying that we'd want another iteration where it's like, so if this is 3 and this is 4, so we take out remove. So this would
Should we not ship anyway to delete the data?
To delete the full state or with all its details, we have that already shipped, I guess.
Okay.
It's technically already there in the API, so we can take it out of the UI, or we can just put it in because it's already there.
Okay, is that what we're imagining? How I just updated it, that we first ship the ability to download and unlock, and then we ship removal of the state version, or deleting of the entire state.
I would say that for deleting the entire state, that can go in iteration 2 actually.
Yeah.
We have the API for that, and it's good as is. So.
Okay, so deleting here. Because our concern is that, and the reasoning here is that, so the reasoning is that there's some complexity, potential complexity of access or workflow or whatever. Right?
I would even say like we should research it with Maria. Like from my side as well, what is the problem there really that our users have, and we can ship the right, like what Matt just proposed, that when somebody wants to delete, we have to ask for a reason. That's a pretty reasonable idea, I would say, and we should ask it from our users. What is the reason behind asking for this feature? And after that, we will be more clever on it.
May also want to ask some things about like access control. Like, should only maintainers be able to remove state versions? What happens if they're, you know, how does that interplay with the idea of protected states and things like that? Because we kind of have a lot of access control stuff that we haven't really kind of concretely figured out yet, it feels like. And
that's already the case, that only maintainers can remove even the entire state, and this would be the case here as well.
Makes sense.
Okay. If I remember well, the whole details page is actually, the idea was that it's only available for maintainers. So for developers, they can just see the list of states and see whether it's logged or unlogged, and that's it. And you have to be a maintainer to remove something.
Okay, so how are we feeling about these 4 iterations? This feeling overly iterative? Feeling good? Can we move on? I'm going to take silence as an agreement.
Yes. I don't know about anyone else. I'm just watching Victor.
Okay.
Victor typing on iteration 1. I was going to add a thought here to state file size. This is this, along with other pieces of this page are going to be like they're actually belonging to whatever the latest version is. Does that make sense? Even though they're not in the versions table?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to create 4 issues, and one for each iteration, and the expectation is that obviously iteration 1 would be taken on first. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, cool. On to the reverse tunnel, and we are running a little over time, so but let's dive into it. Victor, do you want to? So basically, I have you were curious about what is the end user experience, what should be set up in CI, and what currently exists that we could leverage to sort of drive towards a MVC.
Yeah, these are kind of, if we have quick and quick answers to these questions, that I'm interested in this, but I would like us to focus on the scope of development work here as well.
Okay.
I can share my expectations, and then somebody more knowledgeable can just say that I'm wrong. So given that we would use the CI for deployments, my expectation would be that almost everything that we have today works except for GitLab managed clusters, because GitLab managed clusters create their own service accounts and namespaces and all that stuff. So that won't work, but otherwise all the existing GitLab Kubernetes integrations with environments and review apps would just work out of the box. This is my expectation based on my understanding of this feature, but
actually GitLab managed could even work if we do API level proxying, but yeah, that would maybe still need to be a separate issue.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
GitLab would just have a separate set of credentials for internal use, just like it does now, but it would be, going over the CAS bridge or CAS tunnel.
And just inheriting the service account that CAS uses, right?
Yeah, something like that. Like CAS would have, like Agent K in the end would control exactly what GitLab can do on one hand and what the CI can do on the other hand. And so there would need to be some sort of support on that side, maybe to pick an account.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. You mean like have a service account for different uses, because that you might want to give them different access.
We had a discussion, I think, with Tong last week, and there we said that initially we could just reuse the kube context of Agent K. So with the exact same service account and everything. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea. So what do you think?
I think it's probably fine to start with. You could always get more granular or allow more granular permissions later.
I just wanted to add that I have left a comment. So where should I paste the link? Here, maybe? I have left a comment a while ago about the options that we have 3 months ago, about the options that we have for authorization. And I think we can start with, it just uses its own identity, but I don't think it's a good long-term solution. I think it should, for each individual job from CI that is accessing things, it should have a separate group that it's using to access, or maybe group should be per pipeline or per project, maybe per project. Yeah, and then it can use, the administrator can use airbag to say, okay, this CI can do this, CI pipeline can do this stuff, and this CI can do this stuff. And this should all be configurable via the configuration for the agent. And enforced by airbag. And airbag objects should be put in place. Either we put them in place or the administrator puts them in place. If it's us, then it's also a separate setting to make us put them there, depending on some configuration. Like a separate thing, the agent does it as well, but it's a separate kind of process to put airbag there. But then this feature of proxying doesn't know about this. It just makes the access and uses the right identity to make the call. And then if airbag objects are there, it will pass. Or if something is not right, like this job is not authorized or something, it will fail. That just allows for very fine-grained access control.
So I just want to take a second and welcome Graham to the conversation. Graham, we're actually discussing the reverse tunnel right now. We're discussing what an MVC would look like, just to kind of give you context. I know that you commented a little bit on this. So we're trying to talk about what a MVC would be, the most basic level. So I guess, does anyone have, so if we're trying to come up with an iteration 1 of this, like what are we thinking? Can we leverage deploy tokens for this? Is that what I think I saw a discussion about that previously.
I'm not sure how deploy tokens can be used here. It's about giving an identity to a build and making sure CAS can understand if this token for this identity is a valid token, and then so authenticating the access and then checking if it's authorized to perform an action in the cluster. And also obviously actually implementing the tunneling. So to start with, I think let's start from the build. So the build needs to get some sort of token that authenticates it, and then CAS and the build needs to.
Would that be? What is this, a Kubernetes token? Is it a GitLab token? What kind of token?
Would have to talk to CAS, right? And we could use the CI job token even for that.
Yes, it's a token to talk to CAS that will be used to talk to CAS, but it will be used by kubectl, and it will think it's talking to CAS, to Kubernetes API. But yeah, it will be CAS, and it will get this token, and it will understand which build, which pipeline is talking to it. It should be possible with this token, I hope, because, well, if it's not, then this token is not fit for this job. But let's assume it is. So then, once we understand who is talking to us, we can find the right agent to send this traffic to, then send it to the agent, and then the agent needs to, well, this can be done later, let's forget about it. Then the agent just accesses the API. This is the minimal viable thing. And we can do all the nice authorization, airbag, credentials, groups, everything later.
Yeah, that sounds like MVC, as long as we also offer the ability to turn it off on the agent side.
Well, it's off by default.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be, yeah, I guess opt in then.
Because what does
I think I added that it's enabled by default, but you can turn it off in the config. That was my idea when I added it.
Okay, but if it's on by default, then you have a build. Which clusters does it have access to? It needs to be explicitly enabled for a particular build, because there are many agents.
So I guess the token has to specify, like the token is not sufficient. It also needs to specify the cluster it wants to, or the agent that it wants to.
The agent, yeah.
I thought this needs to be in the agent's configuration, and we need to tie what project, what maybe
project
job,
is allowed, yeah.
Project and job, right? And what permissions later. So then this CI job gets this token injected and kubectl configured for that.
If you wanted to have it fully the way it is now, then it would maybe be more like project environment would specify the rights you get.
These are great questions.
My thought is to come up with I feel like we got a little bit caught up in the private repo discussion about how it was all connected and configured and authorized. With this, can we just assume the most reasonable default path? Just assume the most simple thing and just make that work. I feel like just not get hung up too much in making it really configurable. I mean, obviously having it on or not that's an obvious thing, but you know, project level, group level, instance level configuration, just make it as simple as possible. Am I thinking about this too simplistically?
So when CAS gets a request out of the blue, it needs to understand who is talking to it. So it needs to be encoded in the token, and the token has to contain this information. So the token generation mechanism, whatever that is, needs to put it there. And I don't know if CI tokens already have that, then okay, but then CAS needs to understand that this job is allowed to actually make this call. So it needs to have some knowledge to authorize the request. It can authenticate the request, but then it needs to authorize it. And that's where we need the link. We can cut the scope here and say, for the same repository, all jobs are authorized, just like what we did with manifest access. So if you have everything in your one repository, then okay, it just works.
Would that be the most simple thing to start with?
And it can also be enabled by default. And yes, I think that's the most.
And we can limit it later. We can add environments or jobs. We figure it out by then.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what people are going to want to do is they're going to want to, well, maybe I'm assuming this incorrectly, but they're going to want to have agent repositories, and then they're going to have all their projects that they want to deploy through their agent, right? That's where we want to go. But is the most simple first step to just do it all in one repo, and then we can sort of POC with that.
I totally agree with you. And just to give you a bit more detail here, what you speak about is actually what we call today group level and project level clusters. Because the project level is that your agent is in the same project, then you are project level. If you can, once we have group level agents, then we have to have a an answer to these questions that Mikhail asked here, because but at that point we have to figure out how to do that.
Is a group level agent just a join table? Like how complex is this?
It's a user interface as well, not just a table.
So, sorry, if I can just jump in and add a few thoughts as well. Just talking about project and group projects and everything. I'll freely admit I've been reading everything that has been happening on all the issues, but mostly just kind of taking in people's thoughts and feelings, because I think the problem space is probably a lot more complicated than my specific use case. But I just wanted to provide some ideas, thoughts that you may want to consider that make some of these decisions easier. I've reiterated a lot of these points before, but I think they're just worth repeating. A few different things, at least from my perspective, and thinking from the perspective of probably more advanced Kubernetes users and Kubernetes adopters and things like that who are experienced with GitOps and bits and pieces. A few things to try and keep in mind. I think one of the great things about Kubernetes is that you can deploy things, the same thing, even multiple times in isolation. So I think we should never be scared if the answer to something is you have to deploy more agents, or if you have to deploy the agent more than one. So it's especially important when you consider permission models. We've got like 3 or 4 auto DevOps apps that we probably want to run in the same cluster. I have no problems deploying Agent K or CAS or whatever it is, probably Agent K, I guess, multiple times. Like it only uses what, 50 megabytes, 100 megabytes worth of memory or whatever. But if it keeps my sanity in terms of permissions model sane, like if it's like I can easily, don't have to worry about like trying to do this big grid of mapping and trying to understand what, I would happily take the hit of like an extra 2 or 3 CAS that's like an extra 100 or 200 megabytes. 2, following on to that is be careful of this constant idea. And this will vary across people, and it varies across company philosophy and company size. But the concept of going back to your operations team is a bottleneck. In large companies, so I worked at the company I used to work at was very large. They had massively large Kubernetes deployments. They didn't want the ops teams to be a bottleneck. You know, they wanted to be able to give namespaces to development groups, and they could do whatever they want. So following on from that, I wouldn't expect in that size company where you have thousands of developers to go, I need to go and talk to the operations team to configure a CAS, like to, you know, set up the CAS, or they've only got 1 CAS running and for 1,000 development teams, and I have to go talk to them about permissions and stuff. That just simply wouldn't happen. They just simply go, hey, you guys got a GitLab, there's like 1,000 development teams. Each of you go deploy CAS. You just do, if you want to join CAS together yourselves, go do it. But keeping the operator out of thing of cluster-wide, I would actually like to kill anything cluster-wide as a concept altogether. Smaller companies definitely would embrace that more, because if they've only got 5 developers total, they're like, well, cluster-wide to us is everything, you know. So, you know, we've got to wiggle that around, but don't feel like the cluster-wide use case is the default one. I would say it's the opposite. And if you make something for smaller companies, they're probably only going to have 1 namespace anyway. So cluster-wide can still be a single namespace for them. And the final thing I'll say, and I think once again, I think this is something we're kind of depending on different users and everything, but I would try for my personal workflows and everything to avoid what I call ClickOps. I do not want to go into a user interface. I do not want to have to click and add permissions via that. I cannot automate that. I cannot track that in any history or anything like that. So especially for a company like GitLab, I think it's really important how we've demonstrated anything at the company changes through a merge request, whether it's a documentation on the website or whether it's granting access to a user. I hope anything we do with CAS makes that same model. User interface for people who aren't familiar with Git as an option, perfect. Underneath, you know, all that kind of stuff, if it's doing Git commits, perfect, not a problem. But please just make sure you don't make anything mandatory ClickOps so that I can still just control everything through Git. So as I said, those points, I don't think necessarily solve that problem, but I just know with the use case talking about how do we handle private repos accessing different CASs and things like that, don't be afraid, at least to start with, until we get more users really understanding it and using it, to just say simple model. You know, talking about the CAS agent has to be a project level agent. We have no concept of group agents. Maybe that's what you start with, and you say, okay, we're just going to push that away for a moment because we know it's more difficult. and we keep a very simple secure model. Repo, CAS, repo, CAS. Fair enough, you might have to deploy CAS more times than you're comfortable with. That's not great, but it's not bad for a first start. And from there, we can kind of start to like edge out, you know, what is the actual, you know, boundaries around that. That's just my thinking from GitLab.com infrastructure side and what we do and, you know, what we're interested in.
I think it all makes sense. So I was talking about the UI to add group level agents only because there was a similarity of how you do it with the users, like people, you know. I was also assuming, I guess wrongly before, that if your configuration project is within a group, that it makes the agent a group level agent, but that was a wrong assumption, I think.
Actually, I have a use case for group level agents that I learned from users. I don't want to push it right now because I totally agree with Graham that first we should focus on a project level approach. There are probably plenty of users there who can start using the agent, and we should gain adoption, and we have to make sure that the agent works for them. Just for the sake of information, the use case is very simple. I've interviewed a few companies where the setup is that they have a group, and the group defines a namespace because they have multiple microservices separated into projects under that group, and they just want every microservice to be deployed to that same namespace, basically to that same group, and that's how they want to organize their setups, and that's why they criticize GitLab managed clusters as well, because it doesn't allow, even if they set a group level cluster, there's no group level namespace basically that goes together, and that they could just say that, okay, I want to deploy to the group level namespace, not to the project one. So that's the use case that I've seen. I would say, without asking, in 4 interviews out of 5, I'm asking to other that not for 3 interviews out of 5. So I don't know how common it is, but clearly there are a few companies at least where this is the approach. At the same time, I don't want us to speak about group level agents at this point. I understood that we will have to think about how to define where you deploy once you go into that direction, and that's an obvious thing. But we can start with the single project approach.
Yeah, so that follows on, large scale companies, they'll just carve off a namespace and be like, you guys are kind of permissions in that namespace. And then, you know, that team could have 6 services, they could have 100. And you're right, it is tricky for us with the GitLab managed app stuff and other bits and pieces. Like GitLab wants to try and create namespaces, which works well. But actually, when we come to that conversation, there is actually 3 different areas we need to probably think from a mental perspective to bring together: a GitLab group, a GitLab environment, and a Kubernetes namespace. Because those are 3 separate concepts that we kind of try and match them together, but they don't always match together one-to-one. So when we come to that conversation, I think we need to talk about what those 3 things mean and to each other, because I think that's a big part of the problem is an environment. Well, like environment is production, but it's like to us, production is 4 different clusters, or production could be multiple namespaces. So there's this, and a group. So a group could be a group of users, it could be a group of GitLab developers, but how does that map to namespace, to environment, to everything? So I consider those 3 things we need to have a very good diagram out about how we're going to handle that.
Yeah, my plan is that we're going to tackle environments in the next year. I already started to write up a separate category for it because I just think that GitLab environments are really badly defined today, and that will be the next effort for the configure team after Terraform and Kubernetes.
Yeah, the page about environment and deployment does not actually define what a deployment is.
All right. So I guess did we hone at all what a potential MVC would look like? Are we a little bit closer? We've limited it to a single project level configuration. We're considering using the CI job token. I still feel murky on how the delegation or the coordination happens. I'm guessing there's probably some discussion on that in the issue already. Victor, do you feel like we'll need to continue talking about this, I assume? Not quite there yet.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about it, but at least we have a good start with if you want to focus on project level approach, and that you can deploy anything from that project, and this is a good start. We have to figure out whether the CI job token is enough for that to authenticate, but I would expect it contains the project.
Yeah, so it's a question of if there are multiple agents or not. Because if there's multiple agents, you'd have to pick between them on the project level still.
Yeah, even there, correct.
Yeah, I guess, Graham, to kind of ask you about the multiple, so you're talking about multiple CAS instances? We're talking about multiple
agent
we
K.
run CAS. We
agent K.
GitLab.com run CAS. Yeah. So
okay.
The multiple. So my first thinking is it'd be great to just say you can't have multiple agent K instances per project, and that's probably a reasonable, at least first starting point. However, and I can even for our use case, we have 4 clusters in our production environment, so we're going to need multiple agents. So it's not really, we can't limit that too much, at least not for very long. But at the same time, I mean, that's the bigger question is, but you could argue if I have 4 agents, 1 on each of my 4 clusters, they're all at the project level, I would expect, whenever I do something into the project level, to basically all 4 of those CAS agents to be basically consuming that, right? It's still whether it's agent K, not CAS agents.
The other option is that we go with the environments that we have today in GitLab, that the environment name should match the agent name. And that's how we just specify which. I would expect that GitLab uses an agent name called GPRD and gstaging once you start using it. So it's.
Yeah, that could work well with protected environments and having agents with different permissions if we're relying on the agent's service account for RBAC.
So I think this isn't a bad idea. I just want to clarify. So if I had 4 agents, 1 installed in each different Kubernetes cluster, would they have the same name so that could match to the environment? I feel like, or would I create an environment for each one?
I think you would have a shared prefix and then a protected environment pattern.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I think I'm still trying to visualize it, but I think I get what you're saying, like production / cluster 1, production / cluster 2. Yeah, I think that probably makes sense.
Yeah, the problem with having it at the project, like single project and like protected environments and all of that, is that the config file lives in the project itself. And if you create a branch changing the project file, well, I guess it's always on the main branch. It's always read from the main branch anyway. So that's how it's ultimately protected. Your main branch needs to be protected. And then that's how all the environment configuration is like read. So even if you try to be a hacker and change it on branch, that just won't do anything.
And I think that falls into there's an issue we've got open to change environments from being about a branch as an environment to a file glob in a repo as an environment, which is another, that's got a whole other range of issues as well. But that's another important thing for manifests, Terraform, things like that. We always do environments as everything in master is what's real, and environments live in subdirectories or files underneath that. Whereas the branch model at the moment works well for review sites. I think, you create a branch, create a review site, that's great. But, the master protected environments is on the master branch, but in different folders. So that's part of that as well.
So I unfortunately need to drop, but we didn't get into the agent breakout. Do people want to continue with that on their own? I feel bad that I have to drop. I guess we could always do it. We could always do it async. I was mainly concerned about just the road to getting to production, the agent. Maybe we can just discuss that in async. But anyway, I gotta go. So thanks everyone.
Yes, so are there any outstanding items that we want to discuss for the breakout? The document is empty or has road to production. Do we have any updates on that?
Look, from infrastructure side, which probably can give you the biggest insight, I think the big roadmap now is getting all the observability in place. Everything that was highlighted that needed to be done in the initial readiness review. For those of you who haven't seen, I've opened another branch on the readiness review for basically the second readiness review. I've put the pieces I've done in there just, because I know about them and I wanted to get them documented. I'm on PTO from the end of this week, but to be honest, a lot of the pieces that need to be done, I'm not the expert on anyway. We have a SRE observability team of like 6 people, and I'll make sure there's a channel open there for you guys to sync up and have a chat and just work through. They can help you work through all that. I think most of it is simple. It's just like getting some getting our Prometheus to start scraping CAS, and then getting some dashboards and SLOs and SLIs, all that good stuff. But once again, that team can probably talk you through how and help you go through all that. And then I think just a final readiness review and you're probably ready to go. I'll make sure the Kubernetes, the Terraform, all these bits and pieces are done, so it's all ready to go. Just someone from delivery will need to basically change like CAS enabled to true in the Helm chart to deploy it into production. So I'll make sure everything is handed over, but really just focusing on observability. I think Sentry integration was another thing, which is mostly simple, but there's a few different pieces the observability team need to do. So really working with them, I guess, is the next big step.
So you go, Miguel.
Sorry, one thing. We just need the names and Slack channels, please.
Yeah, no, I'll go to them and do it like an introduction. Say, hey, look, they know they looked at the readiness review already, so I'll just give them a heads up, and then I'll also do it on your side. I'll give you the manager, Slack channels. They're all really helpful. They know much more about this stuff than me, so they'll probably get it done very quickly.
Thank you.
So I haven't seen the second readiness review. So just while we're all here, is there anything that is currently blocked by us? So, or is it all on infra at the moment? Is there anything that we need to do to facilitate?
From my side, mostly not. Most of it is like infra needs, infra has to set up fluent logging patterns or Prometheus scraping or things like that. Most of it is blocked on infra side. Certainly all our repos are open. So, there's nothing stopping yourselves from putting in the merge requests to do that. So that's why I think maybe just a discussion with that team first and like, this is what needs to be done, and they can probably give you help. Hey, we could do this, or you could do this, or will allow you to kind of narrow down what needs to be done. Mikhail, you wanted some stuff in. The only other thing was, I guess, if you have things that want to come into 13.7, then you'll need to just, after 13.7 is released, just make sure a quick message to the delivery team, just to make sure that they're updating 13.7 in if there's Helm chart changes as part of 13.7, making sure the delivery team rolls that out as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few more breaking changes to the configuration file. And that's why we need to coordinate that a little bit.
other than that, as long as you guys are doing testing, you're happy with it, you haven't found bugs.
Looks like it works. It can talk to things. Everything seems to be normal. It pulls down the manifests from the repository I have on staging and applies it to my local Kubernetes. It can't do anything else anyway, but what it can works. So
it might be a good idea to spin up like 10,000 projects on staging to see what happens. See how Cass handles it, I mean.
Or at least a number you feel is reasonable, because we do have things like internal rate limiting and stuff, which you may hit. It might be good to know what limits that you have ahead of time.
So I'd like to discuss quickly something else, which is the Protect team is trying to extend, and Victor, this is mostly for you, I guess. The Protect team has been trying to extend the agent and Cass with some functionality to scrape alerts from Hubble, which is a service on top of Cilium to observe traffic that is in the cluster. And they have some very rough prototype to get the stuff and just print it to the console in Agent K. So I've been working to give them the tools to send this to GitLab actually. So, and I have not been working on review apps. So I want to get your opinion on that. And if it's a bad thing or a good thing, what do you think?
I think it's a good thing for multiple reasons. One is that if you go forward, and I think we will go forward as soon as possible with the reverse tunneling, review apps are solved in the current state. You can get review apps if you don't use manifest projects, but you can get review apps in a push-based manner. The other reason is that we definitely want to encourage security features because they are a really good selling point. So it's good for us as well if we have security features supported through the agent. That's great for us. And as a third point, I even think, and I might be wrong here, that this might help with the reverse tunnel as well, because here we are reaching out from GitLab towards Agent K. So this is a work that we plan to do like 2 months ago. No, it's not.
No, this is from the cluster to GitLab.
Okay.
We will be sending data, but it does actually help with the reverse tunneling because I had to do a huge refactoring, which is done now, to split everything into tiny bits, smaller bits, and the reverse tunneling will fit very nicely into this new infrastructure, code infrastructure. So it kind of indirectly helps there. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any objections. So I read it when you wrote it in one of the daily stand-ups messages last week. I might have even put a plus or okay sign to it to give you feedback because I expected that you might you might want to know that. So I'm totally fine with that.
Cool. So I was trying to create an epic for that to track this work because there may be a little bit of work needed on the Rails side of things. And also I'm trying to have a blueprint, architectural blueprint, very like small, simple one, because it's affecting not just us, but other team or even teams in the future. So I want to have a architectural document, even if it's a very like simple document. So to track all that and coordinate all that, I wanted to have an epic and I don't have permissions. Could you create an epic, please, on the GitLab, in the GitLab project, not under the group?
I will try to give you permissions. I don't know if I can do.
And this is all I had. I'm planning to record a short video to talk about this new structure, in addition to the document that I have already, just to like do a 3-minute overview or something. But yeah, I think I don't have any other things to discuss right now. Thank you. I mean, if anyone has anything, let's talk, or we can just call it a day. Okay, then. Have a good day, morning, or evening.
I can't save the epic either.
You can't create an epic either?
Not now. Usually I can. I don't
So
know if you...
something is broken then.
Seems so.
Okay. I'll create an issue then for now. I hope I can do that. Okay, thank you.